Hello, I'm Professor Jim Kinney, and I'd just like to give a shout out to all creatives there in the world, particularly those of you who are using Adobe software. I'd like to call attention to the crisis that's emerging in the Ukraine right now. I know there are a lot of people around the world that are quite concerned about the situation that's evolving there right now. And I'd like to just call upon everyone to reach out to the people of the Ukraine with some words of encouragement. And I'd like to do that in a creative way. And I'd like you to join me. And I'm going to go through a little tutorial that's going to focus on celebrating something that's very Ukrainian. It's the painted egg. From what we can see here, the Ukrainian custom of painting Easter eggs is exquisite. It's second to none. And I thought perhaps we could brighten up their day by creating a custom egg pattern design and then applying it to a social media graphic and sending them a message of hope and encouragement. Of course, the egg symbolizes, for people all over the world, renewed hope, new life, new beginnings, and I'd like to celebrate those very positive ideas and share those with the Ukrainian people at a very dark time in their people's history. So why don't you join me, and I'll do the tutorial. You can follow along, and you can post your own social media message to the people of the Ukraine. All right, we'll see you in a bit. This is something I usually do with my students, and it's typically a Hawaiian shirt project where they get to design their own custom Hawaiian shirt based on a theme of their own choosing. And I just thought, why don't we just pivot this towards creating a sort of celebration of Ukrainian culture in the form of egg painting. So I'm going to start off with it really doesn't matter the workflow that you choose, but I've just chosen let's just create a new file in mobile workflow. And the width, I'm just going to make it 1,000 by 1,000 pixels. So we're using the square aspect ratio typical of an Instagram post. There's a few elements that I want to create here. I've got a theme in mind. I want to focus on peace here, so I'm going to draw a dove. Let me just reset my workspace. I use the Essentials Classic workspace because it dovetails with a lot of older videos, and it's a workspace that I'm used to. So if you want to follow along with me, I strongly suggest using the Essentials Classic workspace, just so we're on the same page. I'm just going to reset my workspace. I wish I could tidy my room like this. Okay, we'll start off. I'm going to draw a picture of a dove. I'm going to try at any rate. So we've got the arch of the head. I'm doing this on a trackpad, which isn't the easiest. So I'm all fingers and thumbs here. I'm just going to try and draw the wing. I'm just using the pencil tool. And now I'll draw the tail feathers. And now the body of the dove. And come back up to finish the beak. Now, I had a lot of smoothing on there. Perhaps I might suggest double-clicking the pencil tool and maybe increase the fidelity and reduce the smoothness, just so you get a little more detail in there. And then you could use the smooth tool if need be. By the way, the pencil tool is located in here underneath the shaper tool, and there's your pencil tool and the smooth tool. And the nice thing is, if you set up your pencil tool by double-clicking on it, you can use this thing here. Option key toggles to smooth tool. Let's just try that again. This time with a coarser setting, or we call that increased fidelity. It's just translating more of your mouse movements into points. I'll give that another shot. I'm literally using my middle finger and my thumb here in this drawing process. Okay, we'll start there. Come down into the arch of the wing. And I like to begin by drawing quite large and then shrinking things down, and then into the tail feathers. I'll be able to use the Smooth tool. Remember, holding down the Option key, Alt on the PC, gives you the smoothing function, and it takes out all of those lumps and bumps in your illustrations. So I'm just smoothing out my dove. We don't want a dove with ruffled feathers. There we go. And that's pretty good right there. I'm just going to scale that down and hold the Shift key down just so it maintains its proportion. Now, I want to just give this a blue outline, so I'll just click on the stroke, open my color panel, choose a blue for myself. I would suggest, if you consider maybe printing this out in the future, maybe going up here under the color menu and choosing the drop-down menu and switching to CMYK color space. It's a little more diminished in terms of numbers of colors and intensity, but at least you know that if you take this out to a color printer, there will be an accurate translation. So I'm just going to expand that. And there we go. And you expand it just here. Collapse and expand. Then I can just pick my blue off of there. I can make mild adjustments as necessary. And that's for my stroke. From the Properties and the Appearance panel area in the Properties tab, I can go in here and I can increase the stroke thickness. Just like this. I can see areas that might need a little bit more smoothing. So again, back to the pencil tool. And hold down the Option or Alt key on the PC and engage that smoothing. I think that's working much nicer now. Don't forget, you can also use your Direct Selection tool. And that Direct Selection tool allows local level edits where you can select a point, adjust where it is. In fact, you can even use the pen tool suite over here, and you can add and delete, or the anchor point tool to convert points to smooth points for curves, or just to straight line points. I'm going to use the delete anchor point because I've got far too many in there. Just removing some of the extra points that really aren't necessary. And then again, direct selection tool, and I can change positioning, change curvature on all of these elements like this. Now you'll notice that there's a very chiseled look. Spacebar command to zoom in. You can see the ends here look quite odd. If you select that and you go to the stroke menu, I always suggest that when you're dealing with strokes, put round caps and rounded corners on them. It just makes the drawing look that much better. Okay, now I'm going to do Command or Control 0 on a PC just to zoom out to a full window. There we have it. That's going to be my dove. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that I'm going to be scaling this down at some point. And whenever you're doing scaling, the best thing I could suggest is go to the scaling tool, which is located just under the eraser, double click it so that you have the modification menu, and make sure that you set it up so these are checked off: scale corners, scale strokes, and effects. And that way, as you scale something and it becomes smaller, the strokes and any special effects that you might have applied to it will also get smaller. I'm just going to delete another point there. Just doing some last minute tweaks. So I select that with the selection tool. That's the black arrow. And then I can scale this down. So that's an element I'm going to use. Now, if need be, I can increase the stroke width just to thicken it up a little bit at smaller sizes. And I did this again over here in the Properties panel under Stroke. I just increased it here. So we have a dove. Well, a dove is a symbol of peace. Another symbol of peace is the olive branch. And to construct my olive branch, I'm going to use, first of all, the pencil tool to create the stalk. So I'm just going to draw a slight curve like this with the pencil tool. Option or Alt key on a PC to smooth it. Now, of course, if you're good at using the pen tool, it's pretty simple to create this with the pen tool. But I'm just going to use the pencil tool because I feel it's the most intuitive. It's the most accessible for most people. So I've just made an adjustment, so I've got this. I'm going to make it so that there's no fill, and I'm going to take the stroke and I'm going to make it green. So we now have a green stroke. Again, remember my suggestion, go to the stroke menu over here, use rounded caps and rounded corners. The reason for that will become apparent when I use this tool, the width tool. I'm going to choose that, and I'm going to stretch that out. Choose the width tool and stretch that out, and you can see that I've generated a stalk for my olive branch. Now for the leaves. For that, I'm going to use an ellipse, and then from the pen tool suite, I'm going to use the anchor point tool. And I'm just going to click on that. What that's going to do is it's going to remove the curvature and make it slightly pointed. Then I can use the direct selection tool. I can elongate that if I wish. I can take this and move it in a little bit and make it more squat. I could even adjust the curvature, including if I were to use the Option key. That's a nice little shortcut for giving these points individual, independently rotating direction lines and allowing really sharp transitions from one curved segment to the next. So I'm going to flip this. That's what this little icon is for. You flip it. So now I've got no stroke, green fill. And I want these to be a lighter green. So I'll select that. My stalk can stay fairly dark. Command 0 to zoom out. Okay, and I'm going to select that with my selection tool. Remember, we've got two. Selection tool and this white, that's the black arrow. The white one is the direct selection tool for editing individual points. We use the selection tool to select the entire object. And you see this box around it. That's called the bounding box. Well, if I go to the corner, you see this icon, meaning it will rotate as I rotate it. And I'm just going to kind of point it in this direction and then move it towards the end. Great little shortcut. Holding down the Option key. So again, I'm going to zoom in. Spacebar, Command, just to zoom in there. Spacebar gives you the grabber hand and lets you move the page around. So I'm going to select that. with the selection tool, and I'm going to hold the Option key down. And that drags out a copy. You've got to make sure you let go of your mouse or your trackpad first, and then release the Option key. With this object still selected, I'm going to go to the corner and just rotate it slightly, just like that. And again, I'm going to go all the way down, holding the Option key. I'm going to rotate that slightly as we move down the length of that branch. And again, hold down the Option key again, a little more rotating. Now there is a way that we could have done this using the blend function, but this is fine. This will work. Again, I'm just going to Option, drag that, rotate it, and continue that process until we have a finished olive branch. Okay, there's my olive branch. What I might suggest when you have multiple elements like this is to select them all. So I'm just going to drag a marquee, and as long as it captures even a little portion of everything there, they're all selected. And I can use Object, Group, or Command G, Control G on a PC. And again, that allows me to scale that down. Command 0 to zoom out. So I have my olive branch and I have my dove. And usually we see them, we see images of the dove carrying the olive branch. So these are a couple of elements that I'm going to use to generate a pattern. Now, the one thing that you will notice about Ukrainian eggs, if I just switch now to my browser, they're very geometric. We're seeing the repetition and transformation of shapes in space. And by transformation, that means the duplication and movement, like the offset, or duplication and rotation of objects in equal increments in space. So back to Illustrator, I'm going to start with a square. So I choose my rectangle tool. I'm going to hold down the Shift key to create a perfect square. Remember, the Shift key constrains movement. I'm just going to choose sort of gold. I'm going to flip that. I want gold for my outline or stroke, and I want a sort of burgundy fill. And I'm going to increase the stroke so it's a little more visible. What I'm going to do to this is use a transformation tool located over here. These are your transformation tools: rotation, reflection, also scaling and shearing, as well as reshaping. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to shear it. So I select shear, and then if I double click that, I get an actual menu. And I want to shear it on 45 degrees. So I click OK. And I've just transformed that on a 45-degree axis. Now I want to copy that. One way is just Option, drag it, just like that. What I want to do is flip that. Now I could do it like this, but I want to control it so it's exact. In that case, again, I would use a transform menu, and I would use, just underneath rotate, I would use the reflect tool. And I'll just double click it to give me menu control, and I'm going to reflect it through the horizontal, as you can see here, as a copy. So that keeps the original intact, and that gave me a copy. I'm just going to get rid of that. Now, I want to make sure that these two things are exactly aligned. The best way to do that is Command Y or Control Y on a PC, so you can really zoom in, and you're looking at the skeletal framework of your objects without the paint characteristics. I now know that these are perfectly aligned. Another way of doing that would have been to select both of them and use the alignment functions up here. Get them to align to their bottoms so that I know that they're in exact alignment, and then just move this. But as you move it, hold the Shift key down. Again, remember, Shift is a constrain function, so it's constraining movement along the horizontal axis that I have initiated movement in. Command Y, Control Y on a PC, and this is the element that I have. Just going to zoom out now, Command 0 or Control 0, and now I'm going to take these two elements, and again, for simplicity's sake, I could group them together, Command G or Control G. I could scale them down a little bit, just like that, and then I want to rotate, I want to do a rotational transformation, but I want to put a couple of little flourishes on there first. Maybe what I should have done is set the first one up so that everything was perfect. So let me just ungroup that. Object, ungroup, or Command Shift G. Before I get there, I want to just use another tool. If you go under the line segment tool, you're going to see the spiral tool. And this is a theme that you will often see in egg decorating in the Ukraine. And I'm just going to take that, and under the Properties tab, under the Stroke menu, again, make sure it's rounded ends, rounded corners, and here I'm going to make it a dashed line. And I want them to look like dots, actually. So I'm going to have to play with the size of the dash. Good, so it's starting to get there, maybe 12. 2 points and 6 points. Yeah, that's not too bad. Actually, there it is at 1 point. It's looking more like dots at this stage. Perhaps make that just a little bit smaller. So I'm holding the Command key down, and it's showing me the bounding box. Hold the Shift key down, scale it in proportion. Command key again, Control key on a PC. I'm just going to put that in there. So that's my element. Let me select those two elements and group them. Command G or Control G on a PC. And again, we're going to go back to the reflect function right here. Double click it. And we're going to reflect a copy. I want to make sure by going Command Y that when I move these and hold the Shift key down, that they're very accurately mirroring. It's not exactly a mirror. I suppose I could have done that. Let's do that. We can select that, choose the reflect function, and reflect it through the horizontal, or the vertical in this case, as a copy. Now let's move them apart. I just wanted to show you one thing there. Take it right back to here. When you're using the reflect tool, you can actually set the point of reflection. So if I zoom in and I click right on this surface here, and I missed it a little bit. Let me try it again. I'm going to click right here. That's going to be the point of reflection. If I hold the Option key while I do that, forgot to mention that. So let's take a look at what that looks like. When you hold the Option key, you get this little ellipsis that pops out, and that just indicates that you're going to get a menu. So I want it flipping through the vertical axis as a copy. There we go. They're both perfect reflections now. Command Y or Control Y on a PC to bring it all back. These are the elements that I'm going to use to make my geometric pattern. Command 0 to zoom out. Control 0 on your PC. Select those two units and group those. Command G or Control G on a PC. Now what I want to do is rotate those in addition. So go back to preview mode, to wireframe mode, and I can see that they're not quite lined up, so I've got to make sure of that. I better ungroup them. So Object, Ungroup. And I just want to make sure. I'm just going to pull this back a little bit. That's why doing things that you want to be really accurate, do it in a high zoom in the wireframe mode. All right, I'll regroup those, Command G. And now what I want to do, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. I want to select those and I want to rotate it around this point. So I choose the rotate tool. Let's zoom right in here. I want it to rotate around that point. Hold the Option key down so that you get the menu. And I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees as a copy. Now once you've done that, you can then do, let me just zoom out there, you can then do Object, Transform, Transform again, or Command D. And it does that for as many times as you like, and then Command Y to have a look at this. So now we have our geometric component. I'm going to group that together. Command G, Control G on a PC. So the next thing in generating my pattern is going to be adding these elements in as well. And so I want that there. I would just use the rotate tool from the center, hold down the Option key, and say I want to rotate it 90 degrees as a copy. Remember Command D to transform again. And so we have the elements repeated. Again, we have our olive branch here as well, and I'm going to do the same thing. Use the rotate tool with the Option key, get it centered, and do it as a copy. And then we do Command D or Control D. Okay, this is the element that I'm going to use for my pattern. I'm going to take all of that and I'm going to scale it down, because what I'm going to do is create a large egg here, almost half the size of that surface, and then I want to apply this pattern to it. You've got to make sure that it works at small sizes. If need be, you need to come in and make minor adjustments. You can do that. But at any rate, I'm going to go with this. That's going to be my pattern element. So now we've got to take a look at the pattern maker function. If I select this element and I go to Object, and then I go to Pattern and Make, it generates a pattern for me. And I can give this pattern a name, Ukraine, Dove of Peace. I can choose the type of grid. I'm going to try this on a hex grid, which makes it look very interesting when it's done like that. If I set this up, if I were to change, now the way you've got to think of this is like you're tiling a bathroom or a kitchen. The artwork is put on each tile, and each tile is set one next to the other. It's like I've chosen a hexagonally shaped tile on which to put my artwork. If I check this off, it will automatically size the tile so that it's exactly the size of the artwork. And if I move the art, the tile will also move. I'm going to keep that off for now. We're going to flip here into a different mode. Right now we're in artwork mode, and what that means is this artwork is still live. I can select this, change the color, change the size, change everything about this, and it will redraw the pattern based on changes to the artwork. If I click this, it flips to tile mode. You'll notice the tile is now selected. And so if I scale that up, it scales up the tile. And that's giving us a little bit more breathing room between the elements. You see that? And I just want to bring that down a bit. Move it over. And so now the artwork is interspersed. I quite like that. I'm going to leave that. And when you're done, you just click up here. Click the Done button. And what it does is you have a swatch panel here, and it's automatically added your pattern to that swatch. Now, for the final piece in the illustration process, we need to draw the egg. And so I'm just going to create a new layer on which that can happen. So I click the Layers panel right here, New Layer, and this one with the pattern element on it, I'm going to hide. I need to draw the egg, and that's basically an ellipse. And so I'm just going to hold the Option key. Option draws from center. Get something fairly elongated that looks like an egg. And then I'm going to use the Direct Selection tool so I can select this top thing, and I'm just going to shorten the curvature a little bit. And I'm going to extend it. And that's our egg shape. Once we've got that egg shape, I'm just going to select it, and right now it has a blue outline, just fine. I'm going to stick with that and maybe make it a little bit thicker, like that. And then for the fill, I want to fill it with a pattern. First of all, let me fill it with a pattern. I'm going to make a copy of this. Best way in which to do that, I'll just do it in my Layers panel. Let me make this bigger so it's easier to see. Panel Options, Other. I'll make this 72 pixels, which is about an inch in size. It's much easier to see the layers now. Yeah, I'm going to make a copy of that. And I'm going to use the copy. It's very simple to make a copy. Just drag it down to that plus sign right by the trash. And I'm just going to hide it for now. It's going to be used as what's called a clipping mask, so that it stops things from showing outside. And I'll show you what we're going to do with that in a second. But first of all, this bottom version of the egg, I'm going to select that, and I'm going to fill it just with a straight up color. I'll go to my color panel. I'm going to kind of choose the fill and just give it a kind of yellow color like that. So we've got one fill right here. And if we look at this right here, this is our appearance panel, also available here, of course. I just want that so I can tear it off. I'm going to collapse it. And what I'm going to do is the appearance panel shows that this object that's currently selected has a fill that's yellow and a stroke that's 5-point in blue. I'm going to duplicate the fill. I highlight it, click the duplicate function, and now we've got two copies. The top copy, the bottom copy I'm going to leave yellow, but the top copy, I'm going to go here and locate my pattern. And so my object, the egg shape, actually has two fills. The bottom one is the yellow, and the top one is the pattern. Okay, what about that egg that I had hidden? So first of all, just let me temporarily lock this down, or even hide it for that matter. And what I'm going to do with this egg, I'm going to bring it up again and make it visible. This one, I'm going to use the Draw Inside method. So I change the mode to Draw Inside. You notice that the egg now has this strange looking bounding box. And I'm going to use the Pencil tool. And I want to draw just in black. So I'm going to choose from my color, just choose black. I'm just going to draw with that pencil tool. Now what I'm trying to create here is the illusion of shadow. And I'm assuming the light's coming from the top right. I'm just coming all the way over here, finish that off. I want to fill it in black. So color panel, fill, black. That's what it looks like so far. Now, again, Option key or Alt key on a PC, and I can smooth this out. It's just a bit edgy. So that's going to be my shadow. Light's coming from top right. I now want to use the appearance panel, and I want to set the opacity for the fill. Notice that stroke has opacity settings, so too does the fill. So I open that up, there's the fill, change its opacity so that it's a blend mode of multiply, and this will multiply the dark over top of the underlying colors in the pattern in a much more rich way than had I just set it to normal, which kind of gives a gray patina to the underlying colors. I'm going to set that at 30%. And the other thing that I'm going to do is go to the Effects menu right here and just down the bottom, and we're applying this to this object, the Effects, and I'm going to go down to where it says Blur, and I'm going to choose Gaussian Blur, and I'm going to use a blur radius of around 50 pixels. And it just gives me that very soft shading that would be typical of an egg. Now, because I did this, let's just take a look at our layers panel. It created here what is called, when I used the draw inside mode, it created what is called a clip group. And it used the top egg shape as a clipping path. And what that means is, despite the fact that I drew all the way out here, this path is stopping the black from spilling out over here. It's containing it or clipping it. Another term for it is masking. So I'm going to go from here now and bring this other egg back, and you can see that it's got shading. You know, we're seeing highlight and we're seeing shadow. I'm going to switch back to normal drawing mode now. And at this stage, what I want to do is export this. We're now finished the illustration component, and now we're going to switch over to the social media component. So we're going to change to a different workflow that will allow us to take this out of here and into Adobe Creative Cloud Express, where we're going to structure our social media graphics. So I'll see you when we're ready to go in there in just a moment. First of all, save our Illustrator file. This is the second version of this I've made, so I'm going to call this Ukrainian Egg 2, and I'm just going to save that on my desktop for now. So that's the original Illustrator file, and I can keep the native version of the file so I can go back and make edits as required. The next thing I want to do is go to File, Export, Export As, and it's going to come up as a PNG, and I'm going to just save that, just export that to my desktop. Background color, I could set this to transparent, but there's a function that I want to show you for background removal inside of Creative Cloud Express. I'm just going to click, keep the background white, and we're done with Adobe Illustrator. Free up to look at my desktop, which is a mess top, really. There's the Illustrator file. There's the PNG version of the file. And we're now going to go into Creative Cloud Express and create a post. So in order to create our social media post, we're using a different production pipeline, and for that we're using express.adobe.com. And you can go there, sign in, and the first thing you want to do is create new content. The Add Content button is up here in the top left. It's a circle with the plus sign. Now, there are tons of existing projects that are great exemplars in terms of design, and lots of templates that you can avail yourself of. Do some exploring. There's a lot of stuff there, including a learn function where you can go in and it'll give you some tips on how to use this platform. But it's pretty easy to use, in my opinion. So we're going to add content by clicking the plus sign, and there's a range of things that you can do right off the top. You can make GIFs, trim videos, resize images, resize your video, convert content to PDF, take PDFs and convert it to content that's usable and remixable here on the Express platform. A lot of functionality here under Quick Actions. And then we want to create new content, and there's a number of pipelines for you there. Well, we want to create this for an Instagram post. So let's just choose that. And you'll notice that within here, there are a number of templates that you can go through, and they're searchable. You can search through pattern, and it'll give you all sorts of things that have patterned backgrounds. And you can remix those templates, or you can just do your own. Start with a blank thing here. We're going to do that. You've got design assets that you can use, and you've also got backgrounds that you can choose from, and I'm just going to scroll through those, and I think this is kind of cool here. I'm going to choose this one, and I'm going to pin it to the background. There you have it. Once it's in the background, you can scale it up or scale it down, and I like just keeping with the theme of geometry, which is so prevalent in those Ukrainian eggs. Let's just have a wander through here. There's a whole bunch of different ones. This one looks pretty cool. I'm going to try that one. Now we've got two backgrounds. I'm just going to remove the one and delete that cell. So we have a single cell. Now, if I select that background, I can then scale it up and down. I can rotate it in any number of ways, and I'm just going to keep that geometry. So I quite like that. That's in keeping with the geometric theme of the Ukrainian egg. Next, I want to bring in my photo. Click here. Now there's a whole searchable library of stock footage that's free and paid content as well, but I'm going to upload my work. So I click upload. I'm going to locate that PNG that I created. There it is. I open that up and bring that in. And I want to scale that up fairly well. Scale it up to about this size. This is what I wanted to show you. We could have set transparent background for our PNG, but I just wanted to show you the capacity that you have in the post function of the platform for removing background. I just click that, and it does a best guess, and it's done a really good job. You can erase more. You can change your brush size for erasing, or you can restore things if you erase too much. So you can actually customize the mask in there. That's a great function for bringing images in. So I'm good with that the way that it is. I'm just going to say done. Now I want to put some text in for the messaging. Oops, it looked like it might have clipped a little bit out there at the top. Okay, so I can click that and sort that out. Edit cutout. And now I can go in there, just zoom right in, using my space bar and grabber hand. I want to restore some stuff. I'm going to make a much smaller brush. The green means include. Red means mask out. And I'm just going to go here, just so make sure that top area is included. There we go. And again, space bar, going to go down to the bottom and make sure we include that bottom section. We've fixed that. I'm just going to click the Done button, and we should have that with greater degree of integrity. Again, there's a few bits there that I would continue to doctor up, but in the interest of time, we're just going to move ahead. I want to put my messaging in there, and I'm going to select this background. I'm going to look at